Hey, this is Davin with Hagerty, our Redline rebuild series. We are back in the shop here today, and we're starting to address some of the things we need to accomplish relative to our Trail 70 project, and then as well our 37 Ford race car up on the hoist there. So first things first is I need to strip all the paint off of the, I'm gonna call it the chassis, I guess, of the bike, the frame of the bike, and then the swing arm, and then also our chain cover. Which all those two pieces will be easy, just be a little bit of time. And this would be fairly decent to do, just a lot of surface area. But one of the first things I want to address is I have everything stripped off of this with the exception of the VIN tag here, or the data plate. So if you look real close, it has a couple little push rivets in here. And talking with the folks down at Trail Buddy, they're typically, what they like to do is they just take and peel this up and then tape everything off real well. And I know they have a lot more experience in doing this, but well, that usually never works out well for me because I always have to try something different. So what I'm going to attempt is to take a little Dremel here with a couple different burrs, and I'm going to take and knock the head of that rivet off enough to get the nameplate off of there. And then I found on McMaster Carr some stainless steel rivets that should be able to pop and tap right in there and reattach the VIN tag after we paint everything. Again, that'll give us that nice, put the trim on after you paint the wall function. So that's what I'm after. We'll see if I can do it better than somebody that's done it for 30 years. But if you don't try something, then you're just standing still, I guess. So that's what we're gonna do. And then we'll get over on the race car, but first things first. My thought here is I have enough of the head ground off that this spring punch will give it enough shock to kind of break the rest of the head off and actually start driving the stud in a little bit. But we'll see. If not, I got another. Not, I use a hammer and a little bit bigger punch. Kind of getting there. It is kind of doing that to it. Look at that. Here it is. Okay. So far, so good. Twice. It worked twice. That makes it a proven theory, right? So, all right, that worked out pretty good. This pad should be completely loose enough to come off without any damage. So let's see what we got. This is almost like a tin foil. So I grabbed a plastic razor blade with the thought that it'll conform a little more, and there's definitely some sort of adhesive to the back of this. We'll just slowly. Look at that. Look at that. Ta-da. Not bad. Okay, so that worked pretty good. So we have our tag off of the neck. Obviously there'll be some glue here to clean up off of there. You can see where the little rivets are at. They'll actually just pop in here the rest of the way. And if they don't, I'll just drill them enough to get out of the way. Because it is like two sandwiched pieces in here. So, cool. One task down. Salvaged our plate. We'll be able to put it back on with some other rivets, and obviously the glue of some fashion will hold that down and not come off. But then when we paint this, it'll be all nice underneath this as well and sealed up. So our step here is we're going to take this, get it sandblasted, and we're going to look to see, you can see there's just one little dent. I believe that's the only dent in this whole thing. So it's weathered the storm quite well. And of course we're going to clean up all this inside so we don't have all that rust in there. A lot of that is most likely from the vapors coming off the lead battery in the inside. Just that tends to corrode some things. When we finish it off, we'll have, you know, fresh epoxy paint and everything on the inside, and that'll seal all that up. Okay, on to the sandblaster. All right, so here's my task at hand. I have a lot of figuring to do. I need to mock up the rear axle into the car, try to put a little bit of weight on it, and set kind of where my ride height is, and understand if where I put the transmission and engine as far as the pitch is concerned, if my drive shaft is gonna look like it's a monster truck at a big angle or like a race car kind of flat. So that's where we're at. So what Ben's gonna do is he's gonna set up a couple GoPro cameras on the whole shop, and ultimately you're gonna see me running all over the place and piecing some things together and probably scratching my head a lot. Here's a quick tech tip. If you're a roundy round racer and you got dirty tires, I just put these in the Gladiator parts washer. They're clean as a whistle and they're tacky, just so you know. All right, let's get after it. All right, so at this point, I'm sure you've watched a lot of time lapse of me circling the car, and probably doesn't look like I accomplished much of anything. But since we haven't perfected the temple microphone that picks up all the brain signals in the thought process, that's kind of what's been going on, is that internal calculations of things. But here's some of the stuff that I'm looking at and trying to understand and what the best way to do things are. So as the car sits, you have to have the car at an attitude. In general, as a circle track car, you know, your left front corner sits lower than your right rear corner, and it tips, and you're working out the frame heights of that. And in getting I'll say not having the exact number where things need to be at, I'm just trying to get things where I think it feels good. And we also, you know, mocked up our tires in the hole and put the axle on a jack stand at the right height, or roughly the right height. Again, it's all eyeballed at this point. One thing I did quickly realize that I need to make a modification to the, if you remember from the last episode, we went and we bought this factory mount, and quite frankly, it's just flat out too tall. So it put the pitch of the back of the transmission, to be exaggerated, is like this, with this mount in there, and then my axle's like way down here. So by dropping that down about 1.5 inches, it gets a little better angle and approach to that. So not a big deal. We'll make some changes there. And again, the other piece of this is setting up the leaf springs. Now, it looks like I've made just a horrendous mess, which, well, it is, but being rusted and whatnot. So I took out all the straps and broke the leaf springs apart. And because of, again, this is not a street car, so you don't set up a circle track car symmetric, where a street car is symmetric. So what I'm going to do is I want on the left-hand side of this car in the rear, I'm going to have a stiffer spring than I do on the right side. And that's so when you go through a corner, it will roll. You want it to roll and plant the tires. So one of the things I'm doing is I took this spring, like I said, all the way apart. This will be actually the right-hand spring, but they're symmetric. One of the things I'm going to do is on the left-hand side, I'm only going to have 3 leaves. So I'm going to take the helper spring out completely. And then again, on the left-hand side, I'm going to take that, the lower leaf here, and it's going to slide it forward. And the idea is I want from the axle to the front mounting point to be as stiff as I can make it. If you think about it, when this goes under load, this spring will actually put an S-hook in it and load. So if I can take some of that out, it'll actually help it lift it and bring that axle down and plant it into the ground. And then again, on the upper spring, or the last one here, I'm actually going to flip it and roll it forward. And just by flipping it, this other hole lines right up in the center, and I keep that center point. So, and then I'll just take and pinch them together. The last thing on the left-hand spring, though, is I will put it in the press. And I have a jig I made up a long time ago for a car of my own. And what I'm going to do is add some arch in the front half of this spring. And what that's going to do is when you jump on the throttle, it's going to basically jack the left side of the car way up in the air and plant the right side and the left front corner. So that'll help it go around the corner as well. So, and then on the right-hand side of the car, I want that spring to be softer. So instead of having 3 leaves in it, I'll just have the 2. And again, I'm going to slide them forward as well on the left-hand side. And then lastly, we'll put the clamps back on. So the front end will be clamped. The front will be clamped in 2 spots here, so it's nice and stiff. But I'm going to leave the back half open. And what it'll do is it'll fan out and turns this into a little bit lighter spring as well. It really helps gain traction and bite on the back end of the car. So that's where I'm at today with the back end. Now the next course of action will be working out the fuel tank and working out shock absorbers and that type of stuff. But I actually have a motor issue or a dilemma to walk through, specifically with the heads. So when we tore this motor down, we have kind of a mismatch, if you will, of parts. So our block is a 66 to 72 440 block. And we have one head that is a 68 to 70, which is this one over here. And then we have one head that is a 76 to 78. Now, right off the bat, of course, knowing history, these 76, 78 are smog heads, so they're not going to flow as well. They're a little bit lower compression and just poorer performing. So yesterday I had a conversation with Ken at Delta Cams, and we were working out, hey, what should this camshaft be? Because that's really the brains of everything, controls all the flow of the, the fuel flow coming in and the exhaust flow going out. And he's like, well, you can make these two heads, similar as far as, the intake runner on the smog head is going to be a little bit smaller, not much, so you could massage this head to match this one, if you will. And then on the older head, the combustion chamber is going to be a little bit smaller because it has a little bit more compression. Now, it's only like 2 cc, so what we would do is we could port this one out to match the bigger volume over here on the right. Now, that is actually a pretty good idea. I think that's decent. But something that we noticed looking at these heads is in the water jacket area, there's a difference. So I need to kind of understand that, and you can see it here. The newer head has 2 ports into the water jacket where the older one does not. I just need to understand what the levity of that is. So that is where I'm going to throw this out there. I would love to hear some direction from our viewership that are Mopar aficionados, which I am not. So if you have some insight relative to the block that we have, relative to these 2 heads we have, and what we would do, that is not go out and buy a set of aluminum heads. I get it. We want to use at least one of these 2 heads to start with, and then we'll match the 2 of them, or we'll find another head, or maybe these are both just complete junk and we need something different but in a cast iron function. So I'm throwing it out there. You're on the computer, you're watching your Redline update, and we're asking for assistance. So shoot all those comments down there. We'll go through them and see what we figure out was the best for us in our function. But until then, hey, shut the computer off, get out in the shop, get your project done. If you don't have a project, get back on the computer, call your buddy, get one. For God's sakes, it's a hoot. You'll love it. We'll see you.